Think about the last time, a colleague's tiny, like slightly dismissive half smile just completely ruined your Tuesday.
Oh, yeah. We all know that exact smile.
Right. You know the one. You're in a meeting, you pitch an idea, and they don't say anything mean. They just give that micro expression.
It's a little twitch of the lip.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And suddenly you just cannot focus for the rest of the afternoon. Like you're pacing around your kitchen later that night. You're drafting, 3 different intensely worded emails in your head that you were never actually going to send.
Never. You'd never send them.
No, of course not. And you have to stop and ask yourself, why does the human brain, the exact same biological machine that can design skyscrapers, write symphonies, build quantum computers, why does it completely and hopelessly short-circuit over a subtle facial expression?
I mean, it is the ultimate paradox of being human, really. We have engineered the physical world to absolute precision, right? But our own internal wiring just remains this complete mystery to most of us.
It totally does.
We walk around assuming human nature is just this random, chaotic soup of unpredictable moods. But the truth is, beneath all that surface-level chaos, there are deeply predictable patterns. We are running on ancient hardware.
Ancient hardware. I love that.
Hey.
And that is exactly our mission today. We are taking an exhaustive masterclass level deep dive into the hidden laws of human nature based on an incredible stack of source material from Solark Studios.
Yes, and it's a lot of material.
It is. Consider this the kind of deep dive you queue up for, like an 8-hour flight. We aren't just going to skim the surface today. We are going to meticulously map our daily triggers to our predictable emotional responses.
Which is so needed.
Right. We're going to uncover exactly why our colleagues, and let's be totally honest with ourselves, why we adopt these exhausting fake professional personas.
Oh, we all do it.
We absolutely do. And most importantly, the big goal here is we're going to learn how to transform our own selfish impulses into genuine connections using empathy and active listening.
Yeah, and I think it's really vital to set the stage right here at the very beginning, because when we talk about decoding human behavior, some people immediately jump to, oh, great, I'm going to learn how to manipulate my boss.
Like it's a supervillain training course or something.
Exactly. They want some Machiavellian tactics.
Okay.
But this deep dive is absolutely not about mind control tricks.
No.
This is about understanding internal mechanisms. It's about gaining clarity, because when you finally understand why people do what they do, like the evolutionary and psychological reasons behind their behavior, you can navigate incredibly complex social environments without falling prey to emotional overload.
I really love that framing, because navigating the modern office, or even modern family dynamics, it just feels like navigating a minefield blindfolded half the time.
Oh, totally.
So let's start with the foundation of all of this, what the source is called the Law of Irrationality. Here is the core illusion we all live under, right? We deeply believe that we are logical creatures.
We really do.
We tell ourselves we make decisions based on facts, education, and experience. But the reality is, and this is a tough pill to swallow, we are almost entirely steered by our emotions.
Exactly. And to really grasp this, we have to look at the neurology. We have to look at how the brain actually processes information.
Right.
So when a strong feeling hits, you say like a spike of anxiety or a rush of anger, that emotion originates in the amygdala, which is a very ancient, very fast-reacting part of the brain.
Like survival instinct fast.
Exactly. It is infinitely faster than your prefrontal cortex, which is the rational, logical, slow-thinking part of your brain. So when feelings take the steering wheel, your rational brain is literally relegated to the passenger seat.
Just along for the ride.
Yeah. And what does that passenger do? It desperately tries to justify the route the emotional driver is taking.
So your brain basically acts as an internal lawyer defending your emotions, rather than a judge trying to find the objective truth.
That is the perfect way to put it. Yes. Your internal lawyer doesn't care about the facts. It only cares about building a case that proves your anger or your fear is 100% justified.
Okay, let's ground this, because we've all been in this exact scenario. You're at the office, you have worked for weeks, giving up your weekends, pouring your absolute soul into this massive project.
We've all been there.
Right. Presentation day arrives, you're sitting in the meeting, your manager's going through the slides, they praise the work, they talk about how great the execution was, but they skip your name.
Ouch.
Just a casual, fast omission. On the outside, everyone is smiling, you are nodding along. But on the inside, you feel this hot, sharp spike of hurt mixed with a deeply bruised ego.
And right there, literally in that microsecond, is where the amygdala hijacks the system. and your internal lawyer goes right to work.
It punches in on the clock.
It really does. Because of evolutionary biology, your brain interprets social rejection or even just a lack of recognition as a literal threat to your survival.
Wow. A literal threat.
Yeah, because 10,000 years ago, if the tribe didn't recognize your value, you got left behind in the winter. You died.
So the stakes feel that high to the brain.
Exactly. Your brain panics. It assumes the absolute darkest narrative possible. Your internal lawyer says, oh, they intentionally stole my credit. They're actively trying to render me invisible so they can take my promotion.
Right. You don't even pause to consider that maybe the manager was just rushed, or maybe they were super nervous about presenting to the CEO. They skipped a bullet point by accident, and they just assumed everyone already knew you were the lead anyway.
You don't consider those options at all because nuance doesn't serve the internal lawyer's case. The emotion of hurt demands a villain.
It needs someone to blame.
Yes. So what happens? You go back to your desk, your heart rate is still elevated, cortisol is just flooding your system, and you draft what you convince yourself is a perfectly professional email.
Oh, the perfectly professional email. I know this one.
You make the subject line something completely sterile, like clarification on Q3 project.
So innocent.
Right. The words are perfectly polite, but the tone contains a hidden knife.
I know, I've drafted that exact email. I mean, you hit send, feeling this toxic little rush of vindication. But then the next day, your manager's totally confused and defensive. The relationship becomes incredibly awkward.
And then you feel validated in your anger.
Exactly. You become even more tense because your brain says, look at how cold they're being today. It proves I was right all along. But the root of all that suffering wasn't necessarily the manager's initial intent. It was your own unchecked impulse.
Which perfectly illustrates a really profound truth from the source material. This is key. Triggers do not create your emotions.
Say that again, because that's huge.
Triggers do not create your emotions. They merely expose the emotions that are already loading your nervous system.
Okay, that makes sense.
Think about the classic crowded train scenario.
Oh, this is a great one from the sources.
Yeah. You're on a packed, exhausting commuter train. Someone bumps into you, a light push. Now imagine it's a Sunday morning, you just had a great cup of coffee, you slept a full 8 hours.
I'm feeling great.
Right. Someone bumps you, you barely register it. You might even apologize to them.
Like, oh, sorry, my bad.
Exactly. But now imagine today is Tuesday. You are loaded with office stress. You are worried about your mortgage. Your cortisol baseline is already sky high. You are practically made of gunpowder.
Just waiting to go off.
Yeah. That exact same small physical push acts as the match. You snap, you turn around, you raise your voice, and suddenly a minor accidental touch escalates into a massive, ego-driven public confrontation.
Because in that stressed state, if you stay quiet, your brain tells you that you'll look weak. You weren't actually reacting to the stranger's elbow in the present moment. You were fighting your accumulated stress from the past 48 hours.
Exactly. You were fighting your own internal load.
But wait, I have to push back here for a second.
Go.
What if the manager did intentionally steal the credit? I mean, we all know toxic managers exist. What if that person on the train intentionally shoved me because they're just a jerk? If we are constantly blaming our own irrationality and telling ourselves it's just our amygdala acting up, aren't we just kind of gaslighting ourselves into accepting terrible behavior from other people?
That is a brilliant pushback, and honestly, it's a trap many people fall into when studying psychology. But here is the crucial distinction we have to make.
Okay.
The law of irrationality does not state that your hurt is fake, or that the other person is always innocent. Your hurt is very real. And yes, your manager might actually be highly toxic and actively stealing your credit.
Okay, so then why shouldn't I send the email? If they're toxic, I should defend myself, right?
Because what the law states is that the conclusion your emotion immediately jumps to is distorted by urgency. When you act out of that immediate, heated urgency, you lose your timing. You lose your strategic accuracy.
Oh, I see.
And you completely destroy any chance of actually fixing the problem. The goal of understanding your irrationality isn't to pretend you aren't angry. Anger is useful data.
It's a signal.
Yes. The goal is to pause long enough to let the slow, rational part of your brain catch up with the fast, emotional part. If the manager is toxic, sending a passive-aggressive email with a hidden knife just gives them ammunition to label you as difficult.
Right, they forward it to HR and say, look how aggressive they are.
Exactly. But if you pause, let the cortisol clear, and address the stolen credit factually and strategically the next day, you actually retain your power.
That makes so much sense. It's about not letting the internal lawyer dictate your behavior in the heat of the moment.
Exactly.
And what's fascinating is that once we start accepting that our own immediate reactions are largely irrational, we suddenly start noticing that we and everyone around us repeat these exact same irrational mistakes over and over again. We are stuck on a loop. Which brings us to the law of compulsive behavior.
Yes. This law explains why we can't just decide to change. Like, under pressure, human beings inevitably slip back into their default grooves. They fall back into ingrained character patterns.
Because it's easier.
It literally is. The neurobiology here is fascinating. Your brain physically builds thicker neural pathways for behaviors you repeat. It becomes metabolically cheaper for your brain to repeat a toxic, familiar behavior than to forge a new, healthy one.
So we choose familiar pain over unfamiliar success. That is wild.
We really do. These patterns offer immediate relief and a familiar identity, even if that identity is ultimately destroying our careers or our relationships.
Let's talk about the firefighter colleague scenario, because I guarantee every single person listening has this person in their workplace. It's the colleague who always manages to become the absolute hero during a crisis.
Oh, the savior.
Right. Deadlines are blown, the client is furious, the server crashes at 11 p.m. This colleague swoops in, stays up all night, puts out the fire, and the next day, the entire team is just praising their immense dedication. Management gives them an award for going above and beyond.
But when you really observe this person's pattern over a year, you notice the catch.
The catch is that it happens every single sprint.
Yes. Every single project somehow devolves into a midnight crisis. When you look closely, you realize it's not dedication at all. It is a compulsion. It's an addiction to the dopamine high of feeling urgently needed.
Because normal, boring day-to-day discipline doesn't give them that rush.
Precisely. To feel that high of, I am indispensable, they subconsciously create, or at least passively allow the chaos to build.
That is so toxic.
It is. They refuse to build sustainable systems. They refuse to delegate. They ignore the early warning signs of project failure, specifically so the building can catch on fire and they can rush in with the hose.
And the explanation they give you is always, well, I just care so much about this company. I'm just so dedicated.
But the mask they are wearing is hiding a deep compulsion to be the savior. It's an identity thing.
And we see this exact same compulsive loop in personal lives, too. I mean, think about the classic toxic relationship loop. A partner hurts you. Maybe it's incredibly harsh words. Maybe they ghost you for a weekend. You are furious and you are ready to leave.
Ratifiably so.
Right. But then comes a dramatic apology. There are tears. There are massive bouquets of flowers. There are these 5-page text messages filled with grand promises about how they are going to change.
And what does your brain do in that moment?
Your brain misinterprets the absolute intensity of their apology for actual sincerity.
Yeah.
You think, well, they must really love me to be crying this much. Like, nobody could fake this level of emotion.
But the intensity isn't proof of change. It's just the other side of the pendulum swing. Because a few weeks later, the exact same trigger causes the exact same hurtful behavior.
The loop just restarts.
Exactly. If we synthesize this and connect it to the bigger picture, the absolute golden rule of analyzing human behavior is this: never judge someone by their best, most exceptional moments.
That's tough because we want to see the good in people.
We do, but the dramatic apology with the tears, that is an exceptional moment. The midnight heroic coding session, exceptional moment. Character is not forged in exceptional moments. It is revealed in repeated, ordinary moments.
In the everyday stuff.
Yes. What a person reverts to under stress, what the sources call their revert point, is their actual truth point.
The revert point. I really want to highlight that for the listener. The revert point.
If a person's revert point under stress is to become hyper-controlling, or to immediately play the victim, or to become entirely cold and distant, that is the pattern you must pay attention to. The flowery explanation they give you after the fact is just a mask for the compulsion.
Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting. Why do we fall into these compulsive loops in the first place? Like, why are we so addicted to these identities of being the savior or the victim or the martyr?
That gets to the core of it.
The source material suggests it's because, at our absolute core, we are driven by a hidden hunger to be the center of the universe. And this brings us to the law of narcissism. We really need to analyze the hidden motives behind narcissism here.
We do, and we desperately need to redefine the word narcissism because pop culture has just completely ruined it.
It really has.
When we hear the word, we picture loud, boastful arrogance. We picture the person pounding their chest, shouting, "I am the greatest, I am the smartest."
Right, the cartoon villain CEO taking selfies all day.
Yes. But, true, everyday human narcissism isn't usually loud like that. It is often a silent spotlight. It is this pervasive, invisible mechanism where you filter every single event in the world through your own ego.
Through your own lens.
Exactly. It's an unfillable hunger that simply says, "I must matter." This drive makes people look outwardly confident, but internally they are incredibly fragile because their self-worth is entirely dependent on constant external validation.
The scenario of the bad listener captures this dynamic so perfectly. And honestly, it's something I think every single one of us has been guilty of at some point.
Oh, absolutely.
Picture this. You sit down with your partner or your best friend, and you are feeling really vulnerable. You say, "Hey, I had a terrible day at work today. I felt so judged by my boss in our one-on-one."
You're making a bid for connection.
Yes. But within seconds, before you can even finish your thought, they interrupt you and say, "Oh my gosh, the exact same thing happened to me, but way worse. Listen to what my boss did." And then they proceed to talk about their own day for 15 unbroken minutes.
Now, if you ask them, they would say they were trying to relate to you. They aren't consciously trying to silence you. But their deeply ingrained narcissistic impulse cannot handle the spotlight being off them for even a moment.
They can't bear it.
Right. They use your pain merely as an entry point to put themselves back on the stage. To them, your story isn't a bid for connection. It is just a prompt for their story.
Wow. And when this happens repeatedly over years, a deep, invisible loneliness builds in the relationship. Like you are sharing words, you are sharing a house, but you aren't sharing presence. You feel entirely unseen.
It creates a massive rift.
It does. And this doesn't just destroy marriages. It explains exactly why work relationships suffer so often. We really need to unpack that because there is this specific toxic identity. The sources highlight the "I am the only competent one" identity.
This one is so common. What's fascinating here is how professional responsibility just morphs into pure ego. You have a colleague who takes on an enormous amount of work. They genuinely work hard, but they actively refuse help when it's offered.
They won't let anyone touch their projects.
Nope. They hoard information. They constantly tell themselves and anyone who will listen that they are the only reliable, competent person in the entire office.
But the irony is this identity breeds a profound, toxic resentment.
Yeah.
They start complaining bitterly that nobody supports them. They say things like, "I have to do everything around here."
But they built that dynamic.
Exactly. They have systematically alienated the entire team by hoarding the work and subtly, constantly implying that everyone else is too stupid to do it right.
Exactly. The suffering they experience isn't actually caused by the heavy workload. It's caused by an addiction to their own self-image as the indispensable martyr. They would rather be exhausted and resentful than share the credit and admit they aren't the only capable person in the room.
So how do we fix this? Because honestly, listening to this, it feels a little bleak. If we are all just irrational, compulsive, silent narcissists trying to steal the spotlight, how do we ever build anything real? How do we use empathy for stronger bonds and transform these selfish impulses into genuine connections?
The absolute antidote is empathy. But just like narcissism, we have to redefine empathy.
Yeah, okay, let's do that.
Empathy is not a weakness. It is not about people-pleasing. It is not about letting people walk all over you while you just smile and take it. Empathy is fundamentally an expansion of your perspective.
Expand on that. What does that actually look like in practice? How do we use empathy for stronger bonds?
True empathy means widening your lens to see your colleague or your partner as a full, complex, three-dimensional human being who is dealing with their own immense pressures and hidden fears.
Oh, wow.
When you are stuck in narcissism, you view everyone else as merely a supporting character cast in the movie of your life. Their job is to hit their marks and say their lines to make your story better.
Right. They exist for me.
Exactly. But when you actively practice empathy, you realize they are the main character in their own incredibly stressful movie.
Oh, that's really good. They are the main character in their own movie.
When you truly internalize that the person interrupting you isn't trying to destroy you, but is acting out of their own frantic fear of not mattering, your reactivity just melts away. You don't get triggered as easily because you stop taking their deeply flawed humanity as a personal insult directed at you.
That is a huge paradigm shift. Just realizing that it's not about you. But it brings us to a major complication. Because we are so deeply self-focused, but we also realize on some level that society will reject us if we show our raw selfish narcissism, we learn to cover it up. We adapt.
We get very good at adapting.
We do. And this leads us to the law of role-playing. We learn to wear carefully crafted professional masks. We learn how to edit ourselves. We need to identify how professional masks hide insecurity, because it's everywhere.
Masks are essentially evolutionary survival tools. If we walked around saying exactly what we felt at every single moment, like every flash of anger, every selfish desire, every petty judgment, society would literally collapse by Tuesday afternoon.
It would be complete chaos.
It would. We have to edit ourselves to find acceptance, to belong to the tribe, and most importantly, to protect our own deepest insecurities from being exploited.
And nowhere is this more obvious than the modern workplace. Let's look at the classic Zoom meeting duplicity. We've all lived this.
Oh, absolutely.
You are on a massive video call with leadership. A new initiative is proposed. It's a terrible idea, just fundamentally flawed. But everyone is using their agreeable, highly polished professional voices. They're like, absolutely, Sarah, that sounds like a fantastic strategic pivot. Totally aligned on this direction. Great vision.
It's the public performance.
Right. But the absolute second the meeting ends, the private back channel chats explode. The Slack channels light up. What a garbage plan. This guy's trying to steal the credit again. This is going to fail in a week.
It is the stark divide between the public mask and the private self.
Yeah.
And if you are naive enough to only take the public mask at face value, you're going to be constantly violently shocked when your projects are sabotaged, when deadlines mysteriously slip, or when people you thought were on your side suddenly throw you under the bus.
Because you bought the act.
Yes. You took their performative, survival-based politeness for genuine commitment.
And it doesn't just happen at work. It happens in our most intimate circles, too. Think about the funny friend dynamic. Every friend group has one. This is the person who always cracks jokes, who keeps the mood light, who immediately deflects any serious or heavy conversation with sarcasm.
The entertainer.
Yeah. You look at them and assume they're completely sorted, happy, with zero real problems.
But the reality, statistically and psychologically, is that the funny friend is often deeply burnt out, incredibly lonely, and fighting massive internal battles. They are playing the entertainer mask purely just to feel accepted.
That's heartbreaking, really.
It is. Their internal logic says, if I stop being funny, if I bring my heavy, messy problems to the group, they will abandon me. The mask hides the insecurity of being unlovable.
You know, it's like watching a stage play. We sit in the audience, we judge the actors based on their beautiful costumes and their perfectly rehearsed lines, and then we feel deeply personally betrayed when they take the costume off backstage, wipe off the makeup, and act entirely different.
We call them two-faced.
Exactly. We call them hypocrites. But we forget that they had to wear the costume to survive the play. If they walked on stage in their sweatpants, the audience would boo them out of the theater.
That is a brilliant analogy, because people use fake work personas. They put on those costumes to protect three specific vital things: their image, their insecurity, or their need for control. We have to uncover why colleagues adopt fake professional personas, and it's always one of those three.
Write those down for me.
Sure. So to protect their image, a person might wear the mask of the overly confident visionary, right? Never admitting doubt even when they are terrified.
Right.
To protect their deep insecurity, they might wear the mask of the aloof cynic, acting indifferent so no one can hurt them. And to protect their need for control, they might wear the mask of the overly helpful mentor, micromanaging you under the guise of caring about your career. Once you uncover why colleagues adopt these fake professional personas, you stop taking their performative politeness or their sudden coldness personally. You stop being an emotional hostage to their mask. You can just sit back and observe the role they are playing.
Okay, so if we are all walking around in these masks, protecting our fragile egos, what happens when our carefully masked ego encounters someone else's massive success? That brings us to what the sources call the toxic scoreboard. We need to unpack the laws of covetousness and envy.
These are powerful forces.
They really are. And I think we need to distinguish these two because people use them interchangeably, but psychologically, they are very different animals.
They are completely different mechanisms. Covetousness is essentially the illusion of desire. It is wanting something purely because someone else has it, or because society tells you it's highly valuable. It's what evolutionary biologists and sociologists call mimetic desire. We mimic the desires of the tribe.
Okay, that makes sense.
Envy, on the other hand, is much darker. Envy is a physical, visceral discomfort because someone else has what you feel you inherently deserve. Envy points to a highly fragile, threatened ego.
Let's take covetousness first. The classic mall scenario. You are happily walking through a shopping center on a Saturday. You are totally relaxed, you have zero desires, you feel completely content with your life.
Just window shopping?
Right. Then you walk past a boutique and see a sign, limited drop, today only, last few pieces. Suddenly your mirror neurons and your mimetic desire kick into overdrive. Your heart rate actually goes up.
Because the scarcity creates urgency, and urgency creates a false sense of profound importance.
Exactly. 10 minutes ago, you didn't even know this jacket or this pair of shoes existed, and now you are absolutely convinced you need it to elevate your identity. You feel a hollow ache until you buy it.
Because covetousness isn't actually about the physical object. The jacket is just fabric. Covetousness is about the feeling the object promises. You subconsciously believe that acquiring it will signal to the world and to yourself that you are successful, relevant, or safe from rejection.
But envy is where things get toxic. Let's look at envy at work. You and a colleague are up for the same promotion. You both worked equally hard. The manager chooses your colleague. Now, if you were a perfectly healthy, fully integrated psychological being, you would process your own disappointment, feel the sadness, and eventually congratulate them.
But very few of us are that perfectly integrated.
Right, none of us are. Instead, your ego feels a mortal threat. It cannot handle the narrative that maybe they were just slightly better suited for the role, because that makes you feel inferior. So, to find immediate psychological relief, your brain distorts reality.
It starts rewriting the script.
It does. You start silently counting your colleagues' mistakes.
Yeah.
You whisper to other teammates that they just got lucky or they played dirty politics. You slowly, systematically withdraw your support from them in meetings.
And this is where we have to face a very uncomfortable, ugly truth about human nature. Envy's darkest form isn't just active hatred or anger. It is the silent, secret imagination of the other person's downfall.
Wow. That hits hard.
It's true. When you are deeply envious, you secretly wish for them to fail the big presentation. You hope they get embarrassed, purely so your own fragile ego can feel stable and superior again.
That is so dark, but it's so real.
Neurologically, the brain registers social pain and envy in the exact same regions, the anterior cingulate cortex, as it registers physical pain. Envy physically hurts, so you wish for their downfall to relieve your pain.
It's a coping mechanism.
Yes, but here is the tragedy of envy. While you are busy spending all your mental energy imagining their downfall, you are completely stunting your own growth. Envy drains the metabolic energy you desperately need to build your own competence.
And this connects directly to the law of friendly facade. Because society teaches us from childhood that envy is an ugly, shameful emotion, we learn to hide it. We don't walk up to the colleague who got the promotion and scream, "I hate you." We mask it.
We put on the smile.
Right. And the source material makes a chilling point here. The most dangerous hostility you will ever face doesn't come with yelling. It comes packaged in a warm smile.
Exactly. It is passive aggression wrapped in the perfect shield of plausible deniability. It is meticulously designed to make you doubt your own reality.
The classic backhanded compliment. Let's say you just got a fantastic new job at a highly prestigious company. You are thrilled. A friend comes up to you at a dinner party, flashes a huge warm smile, touches your arm, and says, "Wow, you're so lucky. Honestly, I didn't think you could pull this off given your background. Good for you. I really hope you can sustain it."
It's a masterclass in psychological warfare.
Right. The front door of the comment is appreciation. Good for you.
Yeah.
But the hidden payload sneaks in through the back door, and that payload is pure doubt. It is designed to slowly bleed your confidence.
And the genius of the friendly facade is that if you get upset, if you say, "Hey, that was actually really insulting," they have the ultimate impenetrable defense ready to go.
The gaslighting.
Yes. They widen their eyes and say, "What? I was just complimenting you. Why are you so sensitive and defensive?" The goal of a friendly facade isn't just to insult you. It is to make you feel guilty and crazy for noticing the hostility in the first place. It exhausts you mentally.
So how do we spot it?
There's a very simple diagnostic rule you can use here. Real care frees you. It makes you feel expanded, lighter, more confident. Fake care, or a friendly facade, manages you. It makes you feel folded up, confused, heavy, and doubtful.
But hold on, let me play devil's advocate for the listener here. If I accept that people are hiding their envy behind friendly facades, do I have to walk around playing detective all day? If someone smiles at me, do I have to instantly assume they secretly want me to fail?
Yeah.
How do we distinguish between genuine social awkwardness, like someone just phrasing a compliment poorly because they are nervous, and a toxic friendly facade without becoming incredibly paranoid and cynical?
That is the exact trap we want to avoid. You don't need to be a cynical detective. You just need to learn how to trust your own nervous system over time.
Trust the gut.
Yes. With genuine clumsiness or social awkwardness, the interaction might be clanky, they might use the wrong word, but you don't walk away feeling diminished. Your gut doesn't clench.
Okay.
With a friendly facade, the key is to pay attention to the pattern, not the isolated incident. Does this person consistently drop these little jokes right when you are feeling most vulnerable? Do they consistently find a way to downplay your biggest wins? Trust the pattern, trust your nervous system, not the smiling packaging.
That's a massive relief. Trust the pattern. Okay, let's turn the mirror back on ourselves. Because when that friendly facade inevitably drops, and we are the ones who actually have to face direct critical feedback, our most destructive instinct kicks in. The source material calls this the law of defensiveness.
And we have a profound misunderstanding about what defensiveness actually is. When we get defensive, we think we are defending our actions or our logic or our mistakes. You aren't. We are defending our self-image. It is the deployment of the ego wall.
Because if our core self-image is threatened, finding the truth and maintaining connection become entirely secondary to proving one simple sentence: I am not wrong.
That is all that matters to the ego.
The detailed scenario from the sources hits so painfully close to home here. Think about the classic feedback loop at work. Your manager calls you into a one-on-one. They have a calm tone. They suggest that your recent presentation slides need to be simpler, less cluttered, and more focused.
A completely normal, entire routine piece of professional feedback. It's not an attack on your soul. It's an attack on your font size.
Right. But your entire internal identity, the mask you rely on to feel safe in the world, is, I am the incredibly smart, perfectly competent one. So when the manager speaks, your brain literally does not hear the slides are cluttered. Your amygdala translates the feedback into a direct existential assault. You are incompetent. You are a failure. You are going to get fired.
The alarm bells ring and the internal lawyer leaps out of their chair.
Exactly. And immediately, before you even take a breath, you start listing excuses. Well, I didn't have enough time to refine them. The data team was 3 days late giving me the metrics. The client specifically asked for more detail in the last meeting. You aren't explaining the situation. You are aggressively defending your identity.
And we have to look at the long-term result of this. What happens when you do this? The manager backs off because nobody likes arguing with a defensive person.
You win the argument, sort of.
You feel a rush of relief. You protected the ego wall. But you just taught your manager a silent, devastating lesson. It is psychologically unsafe to help you grow.
Oh, wow.
They will simply stop giving you feedback. They will quietly start giving the important projects to someone who can take a critique. You win the moment by protecting your ego, but you completely lose the long-term opportunity to improve. Defensiveness gives you a temporary, warm shelter, but you absolutely cannot grow inside that shelter. You suffocate.
Which perfectly transitions into the law of self-sabotage. Because if we are constantly defending our fragile self-image, we often end up consciously or unconsciously destroying our own opportunities. The core concept here is wild. Our internal attitude literally shapes the physical reality of our lives.
It sounds a bit like mysticism, but it is pure psychology and neuroscience. The human brain deeply, fundamentally prefers predictable pain over unpredictable, unfamiliar success. Safety and predictability are prioritized over growth every single time.
Let's illustrate this with the I don't fit in colleague scenario. You finally land a job at a prestigious, fast-paced firm. It's what you always wanted. You join the new team, everyone is sharp, the banter is quick, the expectations are high, but you have a deep-seated insecurity. Your internal attitude immediately decides, based entirely on your own fears and not on any actual evidence, I am too slow, I don't belong here. They're going to realize I'm a fraud.
The imposter syndrome kicks in hard.
You haven't looked at a single fact, you've simply issued a verdict.
And once that internal verdict is issued, your behavior subconsciously alters to prove it true.
Yes. Because you are afraid of looking dumb, you stop asking clarifying questions in meetings. Because you feel like an imposter, you hide your brilliant opinions and just offer a safe, agreeable smile. Because you are anxious, you don't go to the casual team lunches.
And what is the inevitable consequence of that behavior? The team sees you as disengaged. They assume you don't care, or that you aren't up to the task. So they stop giving you important work. They underestimate you. You get sidelined.
That's awful.
And within 6 months, you look at your stalled career and say, see, I knew I didn't fit in. I knew they wouldn't accept me.
It's a tragic, self-fulfilling prophecy. You manufactured the exact reality you were terrified of just to prove your internal attitude right.
And self-sabotage is inextricably tied to our next concept, the law of repression. Because we have to ask, where do these deep insecurities and attitudes come from? They come from what we repress. Every single human being has parts of themselves that do not fit into their neat, socially acceptable, nice person narrative.
The dark stuff.
We all have genuine anger, deep selfishness, profound envy, and weird, irrational fears.
But instead of dealing with them, we shove them into the psychological basement and lock the door.
We do. But the law of thermodynamics applies to psychology, too. Energy does not just disappear. You can lock the emotion in the basement, but unowned emotions eventually own you. They mutate in the dark, and they leak out.
Let's talk about the I don't care mask, because this is the most common form of repression. You apply for a major promotion. You really want it. You prep for weeks. You get rejected. They give it to a rival. Instead of sitting with a friend and admitting, I am deeply hurt, I feel humiliated, and I am furious, you slap on the mask.
The armor goes up.
You walk around the office saying, whatever, I don't even care. I didn't want the extra hours anyway. It's totally fine.
That emotional numbness protects your ego from the sharp sting of humiliation in the short term. It's an anesthetic. But here's the biological reality. You cannot selectively numb emotion.
You can't just turn off one channel.
Exactly. You can't just turn off the pain dial without also turning down the joy and vitality dials. If you chronically numb the pain of rejection and repress your true feelings, you dim your entire emotional nervous system. Long term, you lose your drive. You feel hollow.
And worse, that repressed anger doesn't stay hidden. It leaks out later as toxic passive aggression. 6 months down the line, you are accidentally forgetting to CC the person who got the promotion on crucial emails.
Exactly. So what is the solution? You have to confront the dark side. You have to accept it. And this is vitally accepting that you feel intensely jealous or violently angry or completely selfish in a given moment does not make you a bad or dangerous person.
It just makes you human.
It makes you a conscious person. When you drag the dark emotion out of the basement and put a label on it, like saying, I am feeling intense envy right now, it instantly loses its power to control you from the shadows. You can process the feeling consciously rather than projecting it onto your colleagues as toxic behavior.
Okay, let's take a breath. Suppose we actually manage to do the work. We don't sabotage ourselves. We stop being defensive. We process our repressed emotions. We might actually achieve some real success and power.
That's the goal.
But the source material warns us that Act 5, or rather the next stage of our journey, reveals that success brings an entirely new, deeply insidious disease. The illusions of power, starting with the law of grandiosity.
Grandiosity is arguably the most dangerous law because it disguises itself as positive momentum. Grandiosity is what happens when earned. Healthy confidence warps into pure delusional entitlement. It is the insidious, intoxicating belief that slowly creeps into your brain whispering, I am the exception. Constraints, rules, limits, and gravity are for average people, not for me.
The classic golden touch scenario. We see this in Silicon Valley every single day. An entrepreneur launches a product, it hits the market perfectly, customers love it, revenue spikes. Now, a grounded person would recognize the complex reality. I had a great idea, but I also had an amazing team. The timing was lucky, and market conditions were just right.
That's the healthy view.
But the grandiose person, they assume they possess innate mystical genius. They believe they literally have the golden touch.
The dopamine of success literally blinds the risk assessment centers of their prefrontal cortex. So what do? They completely lose touch with reality. They aggressively expand the company. They add a dozen complex new features that no user asked for. They enter foreign markets they don't understand.
They start making massive, unrealistic promises to investors.
Yes. And when their lead engineers or their accountants say, hey, we can't do this, we don't have the cash flow or the bandwidth, the grandiose leader fires them for being small-minded.
Because they think they know better than everyone.
They completely ignore user feedback and basic market physics because in their grandiose mind, they are beyond physics.
And inevitably, it leads to a catastrophic crash. The tragedy of grandiosity is that it systematically destroys the very foundation that built the initial success.
It's terrifying how easily confidence slips into delusion.
It is. But on the exact opposite flip side of that manic grandiosity, we find two other traps, the law of aimlessness and the law of gender rigidity. This is all about the human soul's deep need for both an anchor and flexibility.
Let's look at aimlessness first, because it is the epidemic of our time. Aimlessness doesn't mean you are sitting on the couch doing nothing. In fact, it often looks like extreme productivity.
Really? How so?
It is drifting through life on default settings. You are answering hundreds of emails. You are hitting every deadline. You are optimizing your calendar. You are constantly scrolling and consuming information. You are incredibly busy, but you have no underlying defined purpose.
Being perpetually busy is the most dangerous distraction from a lack of purpose, because the exhaustion feels like progress. You go to bed tired, so you assume you did something meaningful.
Exactly. And when you are aimless, you become highly susceptible to groupthink and manipulation because you don't have an internal compass to tell you when to say no. You just go wherever the strongest current pushes you.
And what about gender rigidity? Because the sources are very clear here. They are not talking about biological gender or modern gender identity politics. They are talking about locking yourself into extreme, archetypal psychological poles.
Precisely. Psychologically speaking, human beings possess both masculine traits, which we traditionally associate with pure, emotionless action, boundaries, and forward momentum, and feminine traits, which we associate with sensitivity, deep empathy, intuition, and accommodation.
So we all have both.
A healthy, powerful human being fluidly uses both tool sets depending on what the situation requires. Rigidity is when you decide you must permanently lock yourself into just one pole, usually out of fear.
So let's play this out. Think of the leader who absolutely refuses to show any emotion. They have locked themselves into the extreme action pole. When the team comes to them and says, "We are nearing a breaking point, we are burning out," this rigid leader calls it an excuse.
They see it as weakness.
They value only metrics, hardness, and stoicism. They think empathy is weakness. The result, a complete and total breakdown of trust. The team stops sharing risks, they hide their mistakes to avoid punishment, and eventually the entire operation fractures.
And conversely, think of the overly accommodating professional who has locked themselves into the extreme sensitivity pole. They refuse to ever set a boundary. They never say no because they're terrified of conflict or being disliked.
Right, so they get endlessly piled with other people's work until they completely break down, deeply resentful and physically exhausted, wondering why no one respects them. You know, I have an analogy for this. Tell me if this works.
Let's hear it.
It's like having a high-performance, $1 million sports car. The engine represents your daily productivity, your massive energy, your ability to get things done. But you're just driving this incredible machine around in circles in a giant empty parking lot because you never bothered to enter a destination into the GPS.
Just burning gas.
You are burning expensive fuel going nowhere. That is aimlessness.
Okay, I track that.
And to make it infinitely worse, you absolutely refuse to turn the steering wheel to the left because somewhere along the way, you decided that turning left is a sign of weakness. You will only turn right. That is rigidity. So you were moving incredibly fast, burning tons of fuel, but you were rigid, inflexible, and completely lost in a parking lot.
I might actually steal that analogy. It captures it perfectly. To navigate the complexities of life and leadership effectively, you need the anchor of a purpose, the GPS destination to cure the aimlessness, and you need the psychological flexibility to use all your tools, turning the wheel both left and right, utilizing both action and empathy to navigate the obstacles on the road.
Which brings us to our final major area exploration, the social matrix. Because up until this moment in the deep dive, we've spent all our time looking deeply at the individual psychology. We've looked at our own personal triggers, our individual masks, our own grandiosity.
We have.
But what happens when you take 20 of these irrational, masked, insecure, grandiose individuals and put them into a single group? We need to figure out how to apply practical strategies for navigating complex social environments.
You encounter the terrifying power of the law of conformity. And this is vital to understand if you want to survive any corporate culture or social movement. The desire for group harmony and the primal biological need to belong to the tribe will inevitably cause us to suppress our own critical thinking and significantly lower our moral standards. The downward pull of the group is immensely powerful.
Let's explain why that is, evolutionarily.
Again, we go back 10,000 years. If you disagreed with the tribe leader, or if you disrupted the harmony of the group, you were exiled. And exile meant literal death by starvation or predators. Your brain still carries that wiring. Disagreeing with the group doesn't just feel awkward to your amygdala, it feels like a death sentence.
This explains the phenomenon of casual cruelty in the workplace perfectly. Let's say you consider yourself a highly empathetic, kind person in your individual life. But you are in a private work Slack channel with 5 other colleagues. You want them to like you. Someone posted a really cruel, mocking meme about a junior colleague who made a mistake on a presentation.
You know it's wrong.
You look at it and your stomach drops.
Yeah.
You know it's mean. You know it's wrong. But to maintain the vibe of the group, to signal that you are part of the in crowd, you type LOL and send a laughing emoji.
In isolation, sitting alone in your living room, you would never do that. But the group dynamic creates a reality distortion field where cheap empathy for the in-group makes cruelty toward the out-group feel completely normal, even justified.
It's chilling how easily we flip.
It is. Your primal fear of being labeled the boring, moralizing outcast is stronger than your individual commitment to kindness. You trade your personal character for a momentary, cheap feeling of belonging.
And the craziest part is, this crowd dynamic that we sacrifice our morals for is deeply, fundamentally unstable. Which leads to the law of fickleness. We think the group will protect us, but crowds are incredibly dangerous. The source material points out that crowds elevate leaders not because they actually respect them, but because the crowd is anxious and wants a parent figure. Save us, lead us, take the burden of making the hard choices off our shoulders.
Exactly. The crowd elevates a savior to relieve their collective anxiety, but the moment that leader actually tries to lead, the moment they enforce real accountability, ask for sacrifice, or cause the crowd any discomfort, the fickleness kicks in immediately.
The crowd turns on them.
Viciously. They tear them down because the crowd never actually loved the leader. They only loved the relief the leader provided. When the relief stops, the loyalty vanishes instantly. And tied directly to this blindness of the crowd is generational myopia. The arrogant belief that our specific era's norms, our current cultural anxieties, and our modern groupthink are universal, eternal truths. We look at history and judge them for being blind, completely convinced that our generation finally has it all figured out, completely unaware of our own blind spots.
So if we synthesize all of this, the conformity, the fickleness, the myopia, the practical strategy for navigating this complex social matrix is crucial. If you want to remain sane, never ever base your nervous system, your moral compass, or your self-worth on a crowd's approval.
Because it's a moving target.
Exactly. The crowd is fickle, it is driven by irrational emotion, and the group will naturally, inevitably pull your standards down to the lowest common denominator. You must build profound internal steadiness. You must be able to stand slightly apart from the crowd, even while moving within it. But wait, let me push back on this because it sounds a bit contradictory. If crowds are this fickle, if groups naturally pull us down and make us cruel, and if people are just wearing masks to hide their envy, shouldn't we just isolate ourselves to remain authentic? Should we all just become hermits, work remotely from a cabin in the woods, and avoid the social matrix entirely?
It's a tempting thought, especially when you are burnt out. But no, absolutely not. Isolation is just another form of rigidity. It is running away. The goal isn't to fight every group you encounter or to hide from society. The goal is to retain your individual awareness within the group.
So, staying conscious.
Exactly. It's about developing the internal discipline to take that 1-second pause before you send the laughing emoji and asking yourself, is this who I actually am, or am I just conforming? You can be a deeply connected part of a community. You can be a great team player without letting the community erase your individual conscience.
So let's bring this all together for the listener. Our mission today over this massive deep dive was to map these hidden laws of human nature so we could navigate our environments without constant emotional exhaustion. We've seen how our hidden insecurities and need for control birth those exhausting, fake professional masks.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We really have. We've seen how tiny, seemingly meaningless triggers expose our deep irrationality and our internal lawyers. We've seen how grandiosity completely blinds us to reality and how envy poisons our potential.
And I want to reiterate, the ultimate takeaway here is absolutely not to become a cynical, paranoid detective walking around your office constantly searching for everyone's hidden flaws and hostile facades. Aha, you're being grandiose. Aha, you're wearing a mask.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. That is just another ego trap. The true takeaway, the highest application of this knowledge, is to use active listening and profound empathy to build much stronger, more resilient human bonds. We have to use empathy for stronger bonds. We have to build genuine connections through active listening.
Exactly. When you truly understand the mechanics, when you see that your colleague's arrogant grandiosity, or your partner's incredibly frustrating self-sabotage, or your boss's fiercely defensive mask, are all deeply rooted in universal human fears. Fears of not being enough, fears of being rejected, fears of dying alone, your own reactivity just melts away.
It changes everything.
You stop seeing them as villains in your story, and you start seeing them as fellow humans struggling with ancient hardware.
You stop taking their irrational behavior as a personal insult directed at you. You realize they are just frantically fighting their own internal lawyer, trying to protect their own fragile ego. And by doing that, by taking that empathetic pause, you can transform your own selfish defensive impulses into genuine, powerful connections.
Transform selfish impulses into genuine connections.
Yes.
That is the goal.
You start seeing the full, complex, frightened human being standing behind the professional facade. And that is where real, unshakable power lies. Not power over them, but power over your own reactions.
Which brings us to the end of this journey. Human emotions, human nature, it will never be a clean, easily readable spreadsheet. It will never be binary. It will always be murky, profoundly complicated, and messy. But by understanding these laws, we can at least turn on the lights in the dark room. We can stop bumping into the furniture.
Beautifully said. We replace blind judgment with compassionate observation.
To end this masterclass, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought. I want you to really think about this today. Think about the one person in your life who frustrates you the absolute most right now. The colleague or family member whose behavior just drives you completely irrationally crazy. Got them in your head?
I'm sure everyone has someone in mind.
Good. Now ask yourself this. What if their most annoying behavior is actually a mirror? What if the reason they trigger you so intensely is that they are perfectly reflecting the exact insecurity or the exact repressed emotion that you have been desperately trying to hide from yourself?
That is a heavy, necessary truth to sit with.
It really is. Thank you for taking this deep dive with us today. Keep questioning your assumptions, keep observing the world with empathy, and we will catch you on the next one.